You're the richest man in the Atlantic. You sleep in a tent, you eat with your fingers out of a shared bowl, and you'll be dead in 2 years. That's the actual job description. Pirate wealth didn't work the way wealth works. There was no bank, no deed, no will, no way home. What the money bought instead was food, spectacle, rot, and a countdown you'd already signed. The day you get rich, it happens on deck, out loud. The quartermaster divides the take in front of everyone, which is the part nobody pictures. Your fortune is public. So is the captain's. No private ledger exists anywhere on the ship, because nothing on a vessel that size is private. And the split is almost flat. Captain takes 1.5 shares, maybe 2. Quartermaster, 1.5. Carpenter and surgeon, 1.25. You, an ordinary hand, take 1. That same year, a Royal Navy captain earns dozens of times what his sailors do, and nobody in the Navy finds this remarkable. Every crew signs articles before sailing. Shares, rules, punishments, all fixed in writing before anyone has stolen anything. Bartholomew Roberts' articles paid out 800 pieces of 8 for the loss of a limb, scaled down for lesser injuries. Workers' compensation in 1721, 2 centuries before anyone on land got around to it. The captain could also be voted out, any time except during combat. Think about that for a second. The most democratic institution in the Atlantic world was a criminal enterprise. And the money was real. When Henry Every took the Ganges Sawai in 1695, the haul came in somewhere between 200,000 and 600,000 pounds. Every man aboard walked away with roughly 1,000. An ordinary sailor earned about 25 pounds a year. 40 years of wages, in one afternoon. Though gold rarely showed up, the take was usually a mess of indigo, sugar, cloth, cocoa, ivory, pieces of 8, and sometimes people. A rich pirate very often owned an enormous quantity of textile and needed a buyer before any of it became money. They called the contract the chasse partie, the division of the hunt. You split the kill before you'd made it. Clothes first. Always clothes. Captured officers' wardrobes went straight onto pirate backs. Silk, velvet, embroidered coats worn by men with bare-tarred feet on a bare-tarred deck. Roberts went into battle in crimson damask, red feather in his hat, gold chain with a diamond cross taken off a Portuguese governor. Food outranked all of it. Live chickens, cheese, butter, wine, sugar. A captured merchant ship was a pantry before it was anything else, and pirates ate demonstrably better than the Royal Navy, which was a documented recruiting argument, the way a company today brags about lunch. Their signature dish was salmagundi, assorted marinated meats, fish, hard-boiled eggs, onions, cabbage, olives, drowned in oil and spiced vinegar, served in one communal basin. So the richest man in the Atlantic is eating with his fingers, standing up, out of a shared bowl. Alcohol counted as part of the take. Rum was currency. A crew could be functionally useless for days after capturing a liquor ship, and prizes were genuinely lost this way, ships escaping while everyone aboard was too drunk to give chase. Your fortune, meanwhile, lived in a chest under your hammock, for weeks, a foot from your neighbors. Which brings us to Bartholomew Roberts, the most successful pirate who ever lived. Welsh, former mate on a slave ship, captured by pirates, elected their captain 6 weeks later. He drank tea. He didn't swear. He banned gambling and women aboard, and his articles required all candles out at 8 in the evening. 400 ships in 3 years. The most prolific pirate in history was a teetotaler in crimson damask who went to bed at a children's bedtime. Now you spend it. All of it. In about 3 weeks. That sounds like recklessness, and it was the model. A rich pirate who stayed ashore was a visible pirate, and visible pirates got hanged. So you converted money into experience as fast as physically possible and went back to sea. Spending was the only conversion available. You couldn't buy land, you couldn't buy a title. No bank would take you. The only route from coin to status ran through handing it over in front of witnesses. Absurdly, theatrically. Which is why one contemporary report describes pirates paying 500 pieces of 8 for a single night with a prostitute. The night wasn't the point. The audience was. Today, we call that bottle service. Nassau hosted most of it. New Providence Island, a functioning pirate republic from roughly 1706 to 1718. No governor, no law, about 1,000 pirates. Also no streets, no working church, cattle wandering loose, and a persistent smell of rotting hides. The town was built out of stretched sailcloth and salvaged wreck timber. The richest men in the Atlantic Ocean slept in tents. Port Royal in Jamaica was the upscale option. Around 6,500 people and over 40 taverns in the 1680s, which works out to one tavern per 160 residents, infants included. Then in 1692, an earthquake dropped most of it into the sea. 2,000 dead in minutes. A great many people read that as a verdict. Sam Bellamy took the largest haul of the entire Golden Age. He refused the powdered wig, tied his hair back with a plain black ribbon. He died at 28 in a storm off Cape Cod with his whole fortune in the hold, sailing north, probably to see a woman. His wreck surfaced in 1984 with over 200,000 artifacts in it. Here's where the silk gets complicated. Washing wasn't a thing. Fresh water was rationed for drinking, so you washed in seawater, which left a crust of salt that cracked and blistered wherever your clothes rubbed. Stolen silk was worn until it rotted off, unwashed, on an unwashed body. Luxury and putrefaction on the same man, simultaneously. Lice and fleas were universal. The tar in a sailor's hair was partly for that, hence Jack Tar. Drinking water sat in wooden casks and went green and alive within weeks. You drank it anyway, cut with rum, which explains a great deal about the rum ration. Half a liter a man a day, on top of the beer. The ship's biscuit had weevils. You wrapped it on the table to make them come out. Some men preferred to eat in the dark. The standard treatment for syphilis was mercury, as an ointment, as inhaled vapor, sometimes swallowed. Teeth fell out. You salivated uncontrollably. Your hands shook and never stopped. A night with Venus, a lifetime with Mercury. Amputation happened with no anesthetic beyond alcohol, the wound sealed with boiling tar. Survival hovered around 50%. Which explains why the surgeon was often the one man aboard who'd been taken by force, the most kidnapped profession at sea. Alexander Exquemelin was one of them, a French barber surgeon turned pirate, and his 1678 account is our main eyewitness source. He describes Henry Morgan's atrocities with the flat, clinical detachment of a man taking notes. What the money didn't buy. Here's the thing that gets lost in all the silk and the silver. The fortune was structurally unusable. No deposit, no loan, no legal will, no conversion into land. No financial instrument on earth existed for an outlaw. Your wealth was a physical object that had to be carried, hidden, or spent, and nothing durable waited past those three, which is why nobody buried treasure. Burying it solves nothing. It's still there, and you still can't be seen near it. You couldn't go home either. Not to the village, not with the money. Home was a rope. The royal pardons of 1717 and 1718 offered amnesty to anyone who surrendered by a deadline, and many men took it, pocketed what they had, and were back at sea within months, because the pardon forgave the crime while providing no life to return to. No other trade was waiting for them. And the betrayal was built in. Captured crews were tried collectively, and the only defense that reliably worked was proving you'd been forced aboard against your will. So every man had an interest in describing the others as willing. On deck they had voted. In court, they ate each other. Between 400 and 600 pirates were hanged from 1716 to 1726. 52 of Robert's crew went at once in 1722 at Cape Coast Castle, the largest piracy trial ever held. The fort where it happened existed primarily to warehouse enslaved people awaiting shipment. Afterward, the bodies were left to rot in iron cages along the shoreline, in public, as instruction. And it has to be said plainly, pirate crews included a significant number of black men, some freed from captured ships and given full equal shares, some sold on by those same crews depending on the month. The most radically democratic society in the Atlantic and the trade in human beings operated on the same deck, sometimes on the same day. You can't make heroes of these men. You also can't flatten them into monsters. They knew the arithmetic. Roberts is supposed to have said, "A merry life and a short one" would be his motto, which was an explicit doctrine argued out loud rather than a cry of despair. Set against a merchant career of floggings, cheated wages, and press gangs, 2 years of freedom and a rope was a trade a reasonable man could defend in public. Bellamy died at 28, Blackbeard at about 38, Roberts at 39. Average career? 2 to 3 years. Which is where matelotage comes in. A formal partnership between two pirates, shared property, automatic inheritance on death. No law recognized them. No notary would file for them. No family would be notified. So 2 men signed for each other. The only inheritance system available, and the only institution they ever managed to build themselves. They didn't call it treasure. They didn't call it loot. They called it purchase. From the old French pourchasser, to pursue, to chase down. The same root that gave us the modern verb. And the word admits everything. Purchase is what you obtain by pursuit, a word of acquisition dressed over a word of theft, as though the gold had been legitimately hunted, which means it also names the price. They didn't steal that coin. They bought it, in the only currency they had left, at an exchange rate of roughly 2 years. You still press a button marked purchase a few times a week. The word never stopped meaning what it meant, what you get in exchange for something. The only question has ever been what you put on the other side.